Have you noticed how quickly critical thinking just disappeared? It's kinda terrifying that in less than half a century, the internet went from this futuristic knowledge hub connecting us to the rest of the world to a black hole sucking up individuality like it's free Slurpee Day at 7-Eleven. The art of creation is being replicated and replaced by AI and robots that technically can mass-generate ideas for humans to springboard off of, only humans got really lazy really fast, and it's changing everything, including our music, from a colorful spectrum to a homogenized mess. No one important is taking enough creative risk in the era of streaming and social media, and if something doesn't change, borrowing from the past may be the only thing that defines our future. Welcome back to the future, the channel. My name is John, and this is the Think Tank, where I take something that's been on my mind in the world of music, and I turn it into a discussion. Tell me what comes to mind when I say no one important is taking enough creative risks. Taylor Swift? Drake? Tate McRae? Bad Bunny? Ariana Grande? Chris Stapleton? They're all in some way examples of how, music quality aside, the 2020s are flying by and artists seem to be creatively bankrupt, as some of the biggest viral hitmakers play it safer and more gimmicky than ever before as the decade continues unfolding. It's not exactly a secret that in addition to cash ruling everything around you, it's also algorithms. Friendship ended with cash, algorithms are your new best friend. Everyone seems to crave the sweet dopamine high of virality. And the more importance we assign to those ones and zeros clogging our feeds, the less diversity we get, which is really ironic considering our modern landscape. 60,000 new tracks are uploaded to Spotify every day. That's more than 20 million songs being added year over year, and that's only going to skyrocket with the rise of artificial intelligence. Let's put this to the test and single out the most famous person in the entire world, Taylor Swift. If Taylor makes an album, Midnights for example, it signals to everyone in the industry that this is the hype train, this is how you market it, get on this wavelength now if you want your streams to explode. Still hypothetical, but say 500 stars adopt a similar pop aesthetic or sound, because who doesn't want Taylor Swift type numbers? Those artists then push down that lane hard, which unintentionally muddies the water, blurring the line further between creativity and influence to the point of invisibility. Taylor Swift is hardly the biggest offender, at least in this category. She's just the universal target that everyone knows, and it's easier to explain my point, but don't think I haven't noticed her 2020's post-COVID metamorphosis away from riskier material like folklore in favor of globally appealing pop. You're probably wondering where the problem is. I get it. It sounds like a negative mindset to even ask the question if Taylor or any artist is being creative enough, but it's coming from a place of fear more than hate or anything else, a fear that we're headed into a darkness no amount of natural light could brighten. There's a seemingly endless fountain of artists spewing great music in the form of singles, EPs, and albums. So if the amount of music we get is through the roof, we're fed for years, why is it getting harder to break the mold as a unique artist? And beyond that, why are so many listeners struggling to care about somebody outside of their typical box? Anyone involved in the music industry over the past 100 years would give you a different answer, but to pull out my tinfoil hat for just a second, are we maybe just trapping artists in a completely new but still kind of awful way? The old way was for the record label or distributor to lock an artist into a contract and demand a certain number of albums to be delivered in a specifically agreed upon time frame. Hey, new artist, we'll finance your big expensive record for you. Now, all you gotta do in return is give us every penny you make from the album sales, touring, merchandising, and also we want full ownership of your masters. Okay, maybe it wasn't always that extreme, but it was really bad for decades. And we saw some hope at the turn of the century. The new millennium, the 2000s, ushered in some creative freedom, but then it started to get really bad again. And it's why we've seen so many modern artists like Taylor Swift and Megan Thee Stallion battling their former labels publicly over the ownership of their master recordings. Record labels take a back seat in the age of do-it-yourself, which often puts puts the pressure solely on the shoulders of the artist and maybe a manager or assistant to plan tours, run social media accounts, which is a bigger job than you'd think, make merchandise, and of course, record and release music, which I hate that that's feeling like an afterthought. Producing your music yourself or with a close friend is the route more and more artists are taking, which usually leads them to use plugins for their music recording software that are available to anyone. There's absolutely nothing wrong with DIY. However, with so many musicians using the exact same or very similar plugins, tones, and secret sauce, which is usually a mix of autotune and digital instrumentation, the window of creativity continues shrinking as the artist population soars. You no longer need super expensive equipment to make music or to sound great. The threshold for entry has literally never been lower. A cheap mic, a laptop, and music software, it all equals potential hit song virality. Look to Clairo, Benson Boone, or Oliver Anthony as proof of concept. Everything points to algorithmic absorption as the judge, jury, and executioner in the case of streaming-era juggernauts versus full creative expression. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek said this back in 2020, and it still haunts me. You can't record music once every 3 to 4 years and think that's going to be enough. The artists today that are making it realize that it's about creating a continuous engagement with their fans. It is about putting the work in, about the storytelling around the album, and keeping a continuous dialogue with your fans. Big tech is the new monkey on your back, the new boss that's not a boss, but is definitely a secret replacement for making sure that some billion-dollar corporation on top has control of the gold being dangled at the end of the never-ending treadmill. These CEOs like Daniel Ek completely fail to recognize individuality. Who would have guessed? It's not like Bjork, The Smile, or Lorde might want some extra time in the studio to give proper care to every aspect of a record, rather than haphazardly flinging it out there just to keep the algorithm happy. Fans are more like gullible sheep more than ever before. It's almost like they think they're getting a favor done for them when anything releases. I mean, just look at the way the Taylor Swift fans reacted to when she was selling them the exact same product like 5 times over. You know, gotta be eternally grateful or else you're not a real fan. Because fans are pushing back less and less to the actual experience of the music in any sort of critical way, parasocial relationships will continue to thrive and devour everything in their path like acid rain. The artist gets their validation no matter what they put out. At least when they're on top, it's like being surrounded by yes men, which in many cases it doesn't really affect the music and it's totally fine. We have no notes for that. But flip to the other side of the coin and you'll see a huge number of artists not creatively pushing themselves much at all, watering down their output in the hopes of going viral without really stopping to think about if that's who they want to be or present as an artist. Lizzie McAlpine is an interesting example of a singer-songwriter going viral on TikTok, but refusing to be pigeonholed by her gimmicky song, You Ruined the 1975. Patience paid off as Lizzie built her success on the back of true artistry and never released that viral song. Instead, she went viral again with tracks like Ceilings off of her excellent album 5 Seconds Flat, and that's just one of the many stories like hers I'm sure we're going to see over the next decade. Caroline Polachek also works as a great example of having your cake and eating it too in this new abnormal approach to putting out music. She drops singles in between albums, letting them have their moment by starting work on a full project years in advance and slowly letting the vision piece itself together while still being able to feed the machine. Algorithms are the new dictator, which I realize is a bold-ass claim, but if we're looking at who or what dictates the narrative, you can do the math. Big tech plus AI assets that can and will continue to disrupt our entire planet equals flaming train wreck caught in 8K. You've probably seen people throw around terms like sampling or sample core, coil array, as a reason why music is struggling with originality, and long story short, it's mostly true. Samples were used more in 2023 than ever before. The floodgates are officially open on a decades-old idea rooted in hip-hop production. Anyone can find any sound or speech they want at the touch of their fingers, and increasingly more common, Kanye West, the creators of the sampled work aren't even asked or credited. That's some classic TikTok brain rot for ya. It's trained everyone to think that a floating watermark with the other person's person's name means you can take and repurpose any work you want for your own capitalistic gain. The app is your oyster. Fuck fair use. We're living in the future, baby. I think maybe I'd like to go back inside now. Tying this back to music's biggest superstars, they're not exactly doing much better as leaders. If you thought trend hopping was bad at the start of the century, look at the homogenized disaster plaguing so many of the consistent chart toppers. No genre is off limits or untouched, so yes, I'm looking at you too, rock and metal fans. We don't get to let ourselves off the hook because we love how we're being fed. Bands I enjoy like Blink-182 or Metallica and many others could be a lot more sonically adventurous. Festivals have become clones of one another as the lineups are filled with the same bands touring the same circuits they have since the early 2000s. Headliners are boring. Everything's the same. Samples surround our every waking thought. The people are desperate for something new, but a huge part of the population doesn't even realize they're drinking the poison one scroll at a time. Our eyes and ears are constantly overflowing with information, and music is being relegated to this background noise meant to drown out the deafening silence of doom scrolling in the dark. Your favorite artist or else their management team definitely knows this, so inoffensive, relatable, trendy songs with a quick viral-ready sound or hook makes the rest of the song become unimportant. Who cares if it even reaches the 2-minute mark? Just as long as they're using the sound on TikTok. Cash in, cash out. Even when great original artists like Tame Impala break out into the mainstream, now the dreamy Kevin Parker aesthetic is everywhere because shoegaze fuzz is popping off even more than it did in its 90s heyday, maybe. So naturally, more people hop on the sound, the more in-demand producer's phone rings off the hook, and every popular artist tries to bring him or someone like him into the fold. The most horrifying pill to swallow is that it's usually not even the fault of the artist. It's hard to blame, especially the smaller ones. They're playing the game the only way they know how in this online modern hellscape. And if the Halsey situation with her label trying to make her fake a viral moment to promote her music has taught us anything, greed is the only factor driving some of these billionaire companies, and it's fucking disgusting. Music's beginning to look and sound a lot like traffic in LA. Clogged lanes, everyone's pissed, no one's really getting anywhere. No one except for those brave abnormal motorists swerving around the systemic knots to try and bring us something fresh. We can only hope that more of these musical risk-takers rise to the top because we desperately need more creative ingenuity and individuality. More artists like The Last Dinner Party Squid and Caroline Polachek challenging musical norms, please. Or else the 2020s are gonna fail to have their own unique identity, just like the 2010s before them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using samples and having influences. In fact, I would call you a liar if you told me you don't have any. It's what you do with that realm of influence that defines you and your art, not some trend you followed that lit up your serotonin for less than 15 minutes of fame. That's it for this episode of The Think Tank. Let me know what you think about the state of, or lack of, creativity in the arts right now. I've had this one burning a hole in my pocket for a while, so I'm glad I could finally get my thoughts out. Drop a like, subscribe to support the channel. Some other videos you might like are on screen, and I'll see you in the next one.